GM, just a quick one before we get going. So, as you know, the Blockmates podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. Certainly shouldn't be considered as financial advice. We have absolutely no idea what we're talking about half the time. So, any investment decision you do make should be based on your own research and your own understanding of the risks involved. One more thing as well, there's around 50% of people who listen regularly who aren't subscribed yet. So, if you please could just do us a favor and hit the subscribe or the follow button or the like button, helps content grow, helps us grow, helps it reach more people like yourselves, and it mean the world to us as well. So that's the last I'll ask of you. So yeah, let's get to the episode.
GM, and welcome back to the channel. In this one, we're taking an overview of Destra Network. So this is a DePIN application layer with a lot of things being built on top of it. And these guys are certainly decentralization maxis, as you're going to see. Ticker for this one is DSync for you degens out there, but let's focus on the utility and the addressable market for this. They have a wide scope, so we're going to narrow down on exactly what they're building right now. So without further ado, let's jump on in, but do make sure you subscribe if you're new around here. So first and foremost, Web3 is running on a lot of Web2 centralized rails. So imagine calling yourself a DApp, a decentralized application, but you have plenty of holes relating to centralization risks. Doesn't sound very Web3, does it? So this is one of the projects leading the charge to actually migrate Web3 into a true decentralized future. So they call themselves the first on-chain one-stop solution for all your DePIN, cloud, and AI computing needs. This does span quite a few different narratives, AI, DePIN, and ZK as well. One thing to note here, we do have a non-team. They are very active in Telegram. They are now up to 8 team members as of the most recent check-in. And this has only been live for like 6 weeks, but the amount they've built in that time suggests these are some serious shippers with some big experience. But let's start with the chain level. So the chain is called Destra Net. Now this is operating as an Ethereum layer 2. They've recently gone on to live testnet. It's called the Dubai testnet, as you can see down here. And so they've shipped the testnet in record time here. Of course, this will utilize the security of Ethereum and acts as a layer 2 environment, but they're not focusing on financial transactions. Think about swapping, that kind of stuff that we see on all L2s out there. This is an infrastructure-based chain, so for decentralized infrastructure needs. Some of these services that are going to be provided are listed here: web hosting, storage, DNS, which is domain name systems, RPCs, and a GPU network. So let's look at the architecture and the foundational pieces here. So this, as it says, is anchored directly onto ETH and will be an L2. At the consensus layer, they have something called proof of sync consensus mechanism, which actually leverages AI to ensure resource management and optimization of the nodes on this network. So backend proof of sync coordinates things. Then a bit more forward facing, we have the service layer, but this is where the apps themselves, the services being provided, will interface with the blockchain. Say you want web hosting that is secured by the chain itself, and the service layer would handle that. Then you have the application layer here, which is the user-facing layer. So what you would see in the UI kind of space. We've got quite a few UIs to go through as they've launched a few of them. And we can see exactly how these services are offered from a consumer application point of view. Now on the network, there are a variety of different nodes with different jobs. So the actual validator nodes here responsible for processing transactions, and there will be a requirement to actually stake desync to run one of these validator nodes. I did ask within the Telegram how many desync exactly to run one of these, as this could be quite lucrative, but that is still to be concluded. Hence, this is quite an early project in terms of its developments. In terms of the service nodes here, so these are the ones that are actually delivering services to the end users. So maybe that's your storage requirements, an RPC, whatever it could be. And these are kind of being overseen by the validator nodes here. So the validators using proof of sync are watching the service nodes and ensuring that they are performing as intended. Then of course we have the client nodes, which is the user-facing node. So this allowing you to use the services provided by those service nodes. So this is going to have use cases for not only peer-to-peer, but also big consumers. I think AI-based companies are going to be using this network going forward. And here we get into the cryptographic techniques being used. So ZK proofs. So this is a privacy preserving technique, one of the foremost techniques in crypto, allowing for the verification of data without actually revealing the truth of that data. So as I see it right now, you can see the kind of narratives that this encompasses: AI, DePIN, and ZK. And I think this is super important, the fact they've got zero knowledge proofs at the base layer, due to the fact if you want to maintain decentralization, privacy, all these key things, you need to ensure security is of paramount importance. And from going through the docs and interacting with the team on Telegram, you can see that this is their key driving kind of North Star: decentralization, privacy. So what Destra Network is going to provide is encryption and privacy preservation. So if you've got very important files you need stored, and maybe you don't want to trust a centralized party in the kind of Web 2 world, as we know there's been tons and tons of data breaches, maybe you'll want to use a solution like Destra here, which I do think will be imperative as we move towards more data-centric economies. So then just to touch on proof of sync a little bit more. So this operates on the principle of verifying the synchronicity and performance metrics of nodes to ensure a robust, secure network. So this means there is real-time monitoring via this consensus method to ensure that data is true, there is integrity behind it, and it utilizes AI to do this. This is what Dexter here, so this is the CEO and founder of Destra Network, goes into in this little thread here, where he's kind of celebrating the Dubai testnet being launched. He states there will be AI-driven synchronization challenges. So the Destra L2 uses artificial intelligence to ensure nodes are synchronized and performing optimally. Now these challenges are individualized. So in terms of the performance history of individual nodes, say they are underperforming, they'll be tested more frequently and given different challenges, whereas the better performing nodes maybe have less intense challenges, maybe less frequent. So this is super smart in terms of the consensus mechanism. And the idea here is that this will improve efficiency overall as this network is continually learning about itself. So something a bit different, something a bit new. And obviously if you have these nodes that are performing well, they get rewarded more. And those that perform less well get rewarded less. So you have that economic incentive backing that up as well. So let's jump into Destra's distributed GPU network. So we know that AI requires immense amounts of compute, and oftentimes there are just not enough resources to go around. Demand is outstripping the supply. And so having these DePIN networks of GPUs, they're going to be utilized heavily. Many companies won't have the available funds to set up their own data centers, and so DePIN networks are going to be major beneficiaries. So then here Destra goes into how they're going to provide for a more equitable ecosystem with this access to GPU power being accessible to everyone and not gatekept by those with the most funds, which is what we're seeing with the likes of OpenAI, etc. And your Googles of this world, they have all the money, hence they have all the compute resource and can get ahead of everybody else. But I think these DePIN networks are going to be absolutely huge in terms of the future of AI. And so this is a backbone piece of what they're building out. Think of it like IONET as well. We know that they are amassing GPUs in this decentralized network. This is something they're also trying to do here at Destra. So at the physical layer, they go into how there will be a variety of computational power and resource, high-end GPUs in nodes specifically built for the Destra GPU network. So they're going to have their own their own owned GPUs, but also tapping into that kind of hidden layer of personal computers and allowing you to supply your GPU resource to this network. And of course, you'll be compensated for doing that. In terms of the UI for this going live, this is currently being worked on as of my latest updates today as I was snooping through Telegram. At the consensus layer here, we've already mentioned proof of sync, but just a bit more flavor on this. So the AI kind of algorithms are ensuring that the accuracy and reliability of computations performed on the network is good, and they can in real time monitor how well things are functioning. Then at the application layer, the AI also optimizes resources and tasks to ensure the best execution time. So for example, allocating tasks to maybe nodes that are closer to the actual user's location to remove some of that kind of latency of delivering whatever it may be. Maybe it's some form of file storage as an example. Then a little bit of alpha from a Telegram chat as well. So the kind of main go-to-market for this GPU network is to actually go for machine learning straight out the gates. So they want to be a go-to for machine learning and artificial intelligence training by people tapping into their actual layer here, their GPU network. And Dexter did go into detail around something called the Destra exclusives, which will be some form of AI trading related application, and this will be one of their key focuses. So you can kind of see they've got this product focus drive for what they're going to be going for first in terms of their GPU network, and then they say later on they'll be looking at things like rendering and other applicable tasks. So this kind of treads on the toes of the likes of Render Network, Filecoin, so a bit of a Swiss Army knife here. Now, something super intriguing within the docs is Decentralized TPU, which stands for Tensor Processing Unit. And this relates to Bittensor, obviously the very well-renowned AI play. So this is going to allow for peer-to-peer sharing of AI compute. So they are certainly going for a bit of an AI theme. And apparently this will allow you a gateway to either contribute to or consume from the Bittensor network. So if you think about accessing Bittensor, if you wanted to start your own Tau subnet, that costs an absolute bomb. So this is the potential way for teams to get access to Bittensor via DestraNet. So potential for democratization and removing of a kind of barrier to entry into Tau. So say, for example, you create an AI-driven application using Bittensor. You could run it through this network here and just pay for the actual compute that you use. So this to me seems like kind of an on-demand access to Bittensor. So potentially this will have a lot of AI clients who will want to tap into this. This hasn't been talked about too much online, but something that definitely caught my eye in the docs here. Now moving on to cloud solutions here. So put simply, cloud computing solutions are on-demand delivery of compute resources. Maybe that is the likes of file storage, web hosting, that kind of stuff, all done over the internet. And these kind of services are often provided by highly centralized entities, AWS, Google, Azure. But Destra, utilizing its Destra nodes that we looked at, is going to allow for users to run a Destra node on their own computer and then contribute storage to the overall network, for which you would then be given rewards in the desync token. And obviously this could increase the amount of storage capacity if you have thousands of individuals in this global distributed network, all providing some storage resources. And so this for me is encroaching onto what Filecoin actually does. So super interesting and a competitor in the market. Now, Grant Sharpley did post this clip from the All In podcast where Friedberg talks about the cloud space and how there is definitely room for mass disruption here, as the likes of AWS do not have a monopoly over it. And he says, yeah, rather bullish on DePIN and AI projects that cater to this, like Destra Network. So let's listen to this clip real quick.
Everyone I spoke with is on multiple clouds. So they're all on like AWS and Azure and GCP, and they use different aspects of each cloud. It's like a race to the bottom on pricing for basic commoditizing services in the cloud, like data storage, right? So my other big takeaway was the cloud is a wide open competitive market right now. Like there is no AWS lock-in in this market. There's no Azure lock-in. There's no GCP lock-in like you guys. Yeah.
So I think it's highly likely Destra, with a team of 8 and a distributed network of GPUs and people around the globe who want to come and tap into this, they can probably undercut the costs of those centralized entities. But further to this as well, they have pointed out recently in a bit of a shots fired moment, they've called out Filecoin and IPFS here, saying that these guys are synonymous with decentralization, but they have these kind of centralized holes. They say whenever a new node wants to join Filecoin or IPFS, those networks, it must first communicate with these bootstrap nodes to obtain information about other peers, placing complete trust in the provided information. The Filecoin team operates these bootstrap nodes on centralized cloud servers, and these nodes serve as the initial points of contact for new nodes entering the network. Hence, you have a bit of a attack vector. So these guys are decentralization maxis, and they continually call things like this out as they want to provide a fully decentralized service with everything they do. Now, first UI to look at here, you have file storage, and this is where you can actually store your files, obviously. Using Destra Net, you can choose the quantity of files you have, your storage duration up to 5 years here, and then it will give you the price. So here we have 500 files being stored for 5 years at a cost of 0.125 of an ETH. You can play around with this and see exactly how it works, but UI just looks super simple to use. And Chad Caff had posted this infographic showing Destra versus Filecoin. In terms of the kind of economic model, I thought it was interesting that Destra for file storage only charges the file owner, whereas on Filecoin, it charges both the owner of the file and the user accessing it. And in terms of latency, the kind of access speed, by utilizing Destra's AI routing algorithms, it will be able to optimize retrieval times. But with Filecoin, it has a more standard retrieval time kind of process with more potential delays. So if that is important to your business, there could well be some key advantages for Destra over Filecoin, but there is of course a full list in here. Obviously, you need to take these things with a bit of a pinch of salt because these are always through the lens of I'm bullish on project A, here is a competitor, here is what it does differently. So of course, do your own research. So we've looked at the inner workings of DestraNet and its infrastructure, but let's have a little look at how it's trying to decentralize the internet and bring Web3 applications out of the clutches of Web2 centralized infrastructure. So hosting, domain names, and gateways, let's talk about that. One thing to also mention on here as well, Destra RPC. Services like Infura are centralized. They log transactions, they log IPs, they potentially surveil you and sell your data on. So lots of privacy concerns around this. And this is obviously one of the foundational pieces of how people actually interact with blockchains. So it's good to see that the decentralization maxis over here at Destra are really going to tackle all the issues we're faced with in crypto at the moment. So here is one of the custom built smart contracts, Destra Core Z1. As they say, Destra Core Z1 is the core for which all of these subcontracts will interact to access all necessary information, making web hosting possible. So for decentralized web hosting with a one-click solution, which we'll have a look at the interface of, Destra have this tech they've built out themselves. And so the aim here is to move Web3 companies away from the Web2 infrastructure. So for this, you need to host your website with Destra Net. So in this, they show you the different types. So a Web2 HTTP request looks like this, but Web3 with desync, you have an IPFS file here. And instead of using a single server's IP address, they utilize the content itself stored as a hash and then distribute that content across multiple nodes in the network. So this is a fundamentally different way of hosting a website as per the kind of status quo out there right now. This will also mean less likelihood of websites going down due to the fact you have multiple instances held by multiple nodes. Now we're going to touch on ENS as well within here, but they have their own ENS Gateway. So if you're on an unfriendly to Web3 kind of browser, maybe the likes of Chrome or Firefox, these are notoriously not friendly for Web3. You can utilize the Destra ENS Gateway to get onto your site. You do have to use a suffix .dcn.site. So for your web hosting, this is the app itself. They released this app to host your own website directly onto Destra Net. So you can choose your hosting plan. How many years do you want to host it for? Go into the one-click deployment tool here. You can drag and drop your files in here or directly import from a GitHub repository. So pretty straightforward, a nice, neat UI to service your decentralized web hosting needs. They've also released the ENS Gateway, as we just mentioned, access websites hosted on ENS domains. So if you've got a website, maybe destranetwork.eth as an example, even if the browser you're on doesn't directly support blockchain-based domain names, users can still access those sites through Destra's Gateway. Within one of their posts on Twitter, they state that we all know how web browsers like Chrome, Firefox, owned by big corporations, are pushing back on decentralized domain names like ENS and refusing to provide support for them due to fears over losing control over DNS, domain name systems. So in response to this, Destra announced the release of Destra ENS Gateway so anyone can browse these sites, and They've released this for free. So they state the architecture is designed in a way that consumes minimal resources, and the protocol themselves will fund maintenance and running cost of this. So it is free to users. And they state that your data, logs, traffic never will be sold on to anyone else. So why is this all mission critical from Destra, and why do we need to take the reins away from centralized entities? Well, this is ICANN, Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. Essentially, these are the overlords of domain name system. So DNS is controlled by these guys. They can see exactly what domains you're utilizing, where you're going, what you're browsing, your web traffic. And this is a highly centralized company with ties to governments. So I'm sure you would have heard of instances of websites that maybe have some form of political or social kind of slant being taken down. This is due to the fact we have centralized control over the internet. And so we are opening ourselves up for censorship by these corporations. Now, one of the crazy attack vectors as well could be if someone hacks, for example, ICANN. A hacker could direct traffic for a specific website to a phishing site. And so, for example, just think about crypto-related uniswap.org. If you had a phishing site in place of that getting directed to, that could mean theft of billions of dollars if in the wrong hands. So Destra has the decentralized DNS trying to take back control. It says Destra DNS stands to challenge the status quo by offering a true decentralized domain name system, surpassing the capabilities of existing solutions like ENS. So they've adapted ENS, made it a bit better using ERC 137 and 1185, which are standards specifically designed for decentralized domain name solutions. So more private, more user-centric. So you can both host your website and have a Destra DNS to ensure the full stack is, in fact, decentralized. So if you have a dApp that is currently running on centralized rails, Destra has the one-click solutions to migrate you over into this kind of utopian future. So here is the Destra DNS Gateway, access websites hosted on .desync domains. So you just come straight into here. And as I say, this has all gone live within the last 6 weeks. So these guys have been shipping at a ridiculous pace. Then we are faced with challenges in the NFT sector, as many of you will be aware. And so Destra has NFT storage facility here. So one of the issues with NFTs is that the token itself is stored on the blockchain, but the metadata, the art, due to the high costs of storing files on chain, the artwork is hosted off chain. So depending on the storage method chosen, the media aspects of many NFTs may hinge entirely on companies maintaining centralized servers. So this poses a serious question for collectors of NFTs. What happens if said centralized company that minted the NFT actually goes under? Well, we of course need NFT storage to be done in a decentralized manner using the likes of a Destra Net infrastructure. So if you come here to deploy.destra.network, you can store up to 100,000 NFTs in a batch, choose your storage duration, see how much it's going to cost you, a couple of Ether for multiple years of NFT storage. And then you would go in through these steps, upload your NFT files, and then the Destra infrastructure will store that NFT data for you. Now, a couple of things to mention here. They've added up to almost $1 million, so 900K of liquidity, which has also been burned, i.e. that liquidity, that LP cannot be taken back by the team. So this shows that they are committed to what they're building, and this is not a LARP project. And we also have this, a bit of a highlight from Telegram. Dexter has stated the Destra chain will make desync deflationary, as desync will be burned in transactions on mainnet. So for lovers of deflationary tokens, you've also got that as a plus point for desync. So overall, Destra is aiming to take Web3 out of the clutches of Web2 and centralized control, trying to do everything in a decentralized manner. And as we've seen here, they've got the infrastructure underway to actually achieve that. Of course, these are going to be some huge tasks. There's a lot of big rivals in this sector, but in just 6 short weeks, they've already shipped a huge number of working products, of which you can test them out on testnet right about now. And so I think this is one of the DePIN plays to have a beady eye on, as when you get teams who come to market and just non-stop deliver, this obviously bodes very well for what they're going to be able to achieve. So looking forward to seeing how things develop here, how big their GPU network can grow to, how to actually get involved with some of the things we've looked at today, as more documentation will be coming online over the coming weeks. Hope you enjoyed this one. Subscribe if you're new. Peace.